The great hall of Prime stretched into the darkness above, its ceiling lost in shadows. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the chamber, their forms varying from the insect-like to the floating crystals of the lumens. At the center stood Wu, Earth's ambassador, his hands steady despite the weight of what was coming. The council speaker, a massive creature of living stone, raised one enormous arm. Silence fell across the chamber like a blanket. Wu had known this moment would come, but knowing did not make it easier to bear. Humanity, the speaker's voice rumbled through translation devices. You have been judged. Behind Wu stood the other human delegates, their faces pale but determined. They had spent 3 months presenting their case, showing records of human achievements, peace treaties, and contributions to galactic society. None of it had mattered. The decision had been made long before they arrived. Your species expands too quickly, a click through its mandibles. You take worlds that should remain untouched. You breed without control. You consume resources at alarming rates. Wu wanted to argue. He wanted to point out that humans had only settled 12 worlds in 50 years, while other species held hundreds. He wanted to mention that human population growth had stabilized decades ago, but he remained silent. Arguments would not help now. A Lumen representative pulsed with cold blue light. Your military grows stronger each year. Your weapons become more dangerous. You are a threat to the peace we have maintained for 10,000 years. The charges continued. Humans were too aggressive, too curious, too ambitious. They asked too many questions. They challenged old traditions. They refused to accept their place in the galactic order. Each accusation built upon the last, painting humanity as a disease that needed to be removed. Finally, the speaker delivered the verdict. By unanimous decision of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby expelled from civilized space. All human colonies in the inner and mid-rim territories must be evacuated within 1 solar cycle. Any human vessels remaining after this deadline will be destroyed. This is our final judgment. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered. Others remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Wu stood still, absorbing the reality of what had just happened. Humanity was being exiled to the outer rim, the lawless region beyond the barrier nebula where no civilized species ventured. When Wu returned to the human delegation ship, he found his team waiting. They looked at him with questions in their eyes, hoping somehow that he had found a way to change the council's mind. He shook his head slowly. We have 1 year, he said quietly, then we leave. The news reached Earth within hours. Protests erupted in every major city. People demanded that their leaders fight back, that they refuse the council's judgment. But Earth's military commanders knew the truth. Humanity had 40 warships. The council had 10,000. Fighting would mean extinction. Captain received his orders 3 days later. He commanded the UNS Resilience, one of humanity's largest transport vessels. His new mission was to coordinate the evacuation of New Sol, a thriving colony of 2 million people on a planet called Haven. Haven had been humanity's pride. Rich soil, clean water, comfortable climate. Families had built homes there, started businesses, raised children. Now all of it had to be abandoned. Stood on the bridge of his ship, looking down at Haven's surface. Cities sprawled across 3 continents, their lights twinkling in the darkness. In 1 year, all of those lights would go dark. The evacuation began immediately. Every human ship, military or civilian, was pressed into service. People were allowed to bring only what they could carry. Homes, farms, factories, all of it would be left behind. The council had made it clear that any human infrastructure remaining would be destroyed. Watched families board his ship, their faces showing shock and anger. Children cried, not understanding why they had to leave. Parents tried to explain the unexplainable. Old people looked back at the homes they would never see again. "How many ships do we have?" asked his first officer. "Not enough, sir. Even using every vessel, we can only move about 60% of the population by the deadline. His jaw tightened. Then we'll make multiple trips, we'll work faster, nobody gets left behind. The same scene played out across all 12 human colonies. Millions of people uprooted, their lives destroyed by the Council's decree. The mood turned from shock to bitter rage. Humanity had tried to play by the Council's rules, had sought acceptance and cooperation. This was their reward. As the deadline approached, the last ships prepared to depart. Navigator Ha sat at her station aboard the colony ship Horizon, plotting the route into the outer rim. The Council had provided no maps, no guidance. They were simply pointing humanity toward the darkness and telling them to disappear. The barrier nebula will interfere with our sensors, Ha reported to her captain. Beyond it, we have no data. No one has explored that region in centuries. Why not? Her captain asked. The Council claims it's worthless. Empty space, dead worlds, nothing of value. Ha studied her readings. But these energy signatures don't match that description. I'm detecting strong mineral concentrations, possible habitable zones. Either the Council's data is old or they lied. As the human fleet gathered at the edge of Council space, joined a conference call with the other ship captains. Hundreds of vessels floated in formation, carrying the entire human presence in the galaxy. Some captains wanted to fight, to make the Council pay for this injustice. Others argued for compliance, fearing that resistance would lead to massacre. Wu, now serving as the fleet's civilian leader, made the final decision. We go into the rim, we survive, and we remember what they did to us. The fleet entered the barrier nebula, a vast cloud of ionized gas and cosmic dust that blocked long-range sensors and communication. Ships had to navigate carefully, following Ha's calculations to avoid gravitational anomalies and radiation pockets. For 3 weeks, the fleet traveled through the nebula. Several times they encountered strange phenomena, spatial distortions that bent light, energy storms that forced them to change course, regions where time seemed to flow differently. The outer rim was clearly unlike any space humanity had explored before. When they finally emerged on the far side, the fleet sensors began picking up readings. Ha's prediction had been correct. The outer rim was not empty wasteland. Planets orbited stable stars. Asteroid fields glittered with rare metals. Energy sources pulsed from nebulae and stellar formations. They lied to us, said, staring at the sensor data. The Council knew what was out here. That's why they wanted us gone. The first landing party touched down on a harsh but mineral-rich world that humans named Foundation. The planet's gravity was heavy, its atmosphere thin, its weather extreme. But beneath the rocky surface lay deposits of elements rarely found in Council space. Resources that could power ships, build weapons, sustain colonies. Temporary shelters went up quickly. Engineers worked around the clock to establish life support systems, water reclamation, food production. It was brutal work under difficult conditions, but humans had built civilizations in harsh environments before. As more ships arrived and more worlds were scouted, a realization spread through the fleet. The Council had not banished humanity to die in the wasteland. They had accidentally given humanity access to the richest, most resource-dense region of the galaxy. The outer rim was not a prison. It was an opportunity. Standing on Foundation's surface, breathing recycled air and feeling the heavy gravity pull at his bones, looked up at the strange stars overhead. Somewhere beyond the barrier nebula, the Council believed they had solved their human problem. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had set humanity free. The first winter on Foundation killed 200 people. The second winter killed 30. By the third winter, humans had learned how to survive in the outer rim. Engineer 1 stood in her workshop, surrounded by broken Council technology and salvaged human equipment. Her team had been working for 18 months straight, trying to solve an impossible problem. The ships that brought humanity to the Rim were designed for Council space, with its stable conditions and regular supply chains. Out here, everything was different. "The fusion cores are burning out too fast," her assistant reported. "The power crystals we bought from the Council can't handle the radiation levels in the Rim. We need a different solution." One studied the data, her mind racing through possibilities. Without reliable power, the colonies would fail. Without working ships, humanity would be trapped on whatever worlds they had already settled. The Council had probably expected them to die quietly once their equipment failed. "What if we don't use pure fusion?" one asked. "What if we hybridize it with plasma containment? Use the Rim's natural energy fields instead of fighting against them?" Her team looked doubtful, but they had learned to trust one's instincts. She had already solved 3 supposedly impossible problems since arriving in the Rim. They began modifying a ship engine, carefully integrating new components with old systems. 3 weeks later, the hybrid drive activated successfully. It was more powerful than the original Council design, more efficient, and better suited to outer Rim conditions. One's innovation spread quickly through the fleet. Within 6 months, every human ship had been upgraded. But engines were just the beginning. Life support systems needed redesigning for the Rim's harsh conditions. Habitat modules needed to withstand temperature extremes and radiation that Council structures never encountered. Food production had to work with limited resources and difficult growing conditions. One's team worked 18-hour days every day for 2 years. They invented, adapted, and improved. Each problem they solved made humanity a little stronger, a little more capable of thriving in their new home. While engineers built the future, soldiers protected the present. Yang had been a Marine during the evacuation, helping keep order and defending colonists from pirates who preyed on the fleeing fleet. Now he commanded the Frontier Guard, humanity's new military force in the Rim. The Guard was nothing like Earth's old military. They had no massive bases, no parade grounds, no formal ceremony. Instead, they operated from small outposts scattered across dozens of worlds, moving quickly and striking hard when threats emerged. Yang trained his soldiers in tactics the Council would never use: ambush attacks, hit-and-run raids, using the environment as a weapon. The Rim was full of dangers: gravity wells that could tear ships apart, radiation storms that fried electronics, spatial anomalies that sent vessels off course. The Guard learned to use all of these as weapons. "The Council fights with overwhelming force," Yang told his troops. "Big fleets, heavy weapons, direct assaults. They can do that because they control civilized space with its safe routes and stable conditions. We can't fight that way. We have to be smarter." His soldiers learned to set traps using gravitational anomalies. They practiced boarding actions in zero gravity. They studied how to disable ships without destroying them, capturing equipment and supplies that humanity desperately needed. The Guard's reputation grew quickly. Pirates and raiders who entered human territory usually didn't leave. Slaver ships that targeted human colonies were found drifting in space, their crews missing, their cargo freed. The Frontier Guard didn't wear fancy uniforms or march in parades, but everyone in the Rim knew they were not to be crossed. As humanity grew stronger, the colonies expanded. What started as 5 temporary settlements became 20 permanent cities. Mining operations dug into asteroid fields, pulling out rare metals and elements. Refineries processed raw materials into usable goods. Shipyards constructed new vessels using Rim resources. Settlers discovered that the outer Rim held resources barely seen in Council space. Certain elements that powered advanced technology were common here. Energy sources that the Council considered rare could be found in abundance. The region that was supposedly worthless turned out to be incredibly valuable. Word spread even into Council space. Through smugglers and traders who didn't respect the Council's boundaries, stories leaked out. Humans weren't just surviving in the rim, they were thriving. 2 years after the exile, humanity made contact with another species. They were reptilian beings, roughly human-sized but covered in tough scales. They had been exiled by the Council 3 generations earlier for refusing to surrender their weapons and submit to Council authority. The first meeting happened when a human mining ship encountered a vessel near a resource-rich asteroid field. Both ships powered weapons, both crews prepared for combat. Then the commander, Vex, opened a communication channel. "You are the humans," Vex said, his voice harsh but understandable. "The ones the Council recently expelled." General Sang-hoon, commanding the human ship, replied carefully, "We are, and you are the exiled before us." "Then we share an enemy," Vex said. "Perhaps we should talk rather than fight." The meeting was tense. Decades of isolation had made them suspicious and aggressive. Humanity's recent exile had left them angry and defensive. But both species recognized a simple truth: they were stronger together than apart. Sang-hoon and Vex met in person on a neutral station. The general was a veteran of Earth's last war, a man who understood both combat and diplomacy. He laid out a simple proposal. "The Council wants us both dead or forgotten," Sang-hoon said. "They exiled us hoping we would disappear. Instead, we can build something new out here, something they can't control." Vex studied the human carefully. "You speak of alliance, but humans are ambitious. You expand quickly. How do we know you won't eventually turn on us as the Council did?" "You don't," Sang-hoon admitted. "But consider this. Right now, both our peoples are vulnerable. The Council could attack either of us if they chose. Together, we're strong enough to make them think twice. Together, we can share knowledge, resources, and defense. Apart, we're just two groups of exiles waiting to die." The negotiations took 3 months. Cultural differences created misunderstandings. Old suspicions flared into arguments. But slowly, carefully, a framework emerged. They would share their knowledge of rim navigation and dangerous phenomena they had learned about over 3 generations. Humans would share their advanced technology and manufacturing capabilities. Both species would defend each other's territories and trade freely. The alliance was formalized with a simple treaty. No complicated legal language, no formal ceremonies. Just two species agreeing to work together against a common enemy. This knowledge proved invaluable. They taught humans about void beasts, massive creatures that lived in deep space and attacked ships that ventured too close. They warned about gravity storms that appeared without warning, crushing anything caught inside. They showed humans how to navigate using the rim's unique energy patterns rather than standard star charts. In return, humanity shared one's technological innovations. Ships were upgraded with hybrid drives. Their colonies received improved life support systems. Their weapons were enhanced with human manufacturing techniques. Trade routes opened between human and territories. What started as cautious exchanges became regular commerce. Human merchants traded manufactured goods for biological compounds and navigational data. Cultural exchanges began, with humans learning history and learning human customs. Other exiled species took notice. The amphibious beings expelled for genetic experimentation. The silicon-based life forms banished for violating Council mining regulations. The exiled for refusing to limit their colony sizes. One by one, these species approached the human alliance, seeking protection and partnership. Not all contacts were peaceful. Some groups tried to exploit human colonies, viewing the newcomers as weak targets. They learned quickly that this was a mistake. The Frontier Guard, now working alongside warriors, responded to every attack with overwhelming force. Raiders who struck human settlements were hunted down. Pirates who ambushed trade ships found themselves facing coordinated human battle groups. 3 years after the exile, humanity controlled a network of 30 colonies across 15 star systems. The human population in the rim had actually grown, as children were born and new settlers arrived from Earth. Technology had advanced beyond what the Council used. Military strength had increased tenfold. Administrator oversaw the construction of New Terra, humanity's new capital. Built inside a massive asteroid cluster, the city combined human engineering with architectural knowledge, provided food and green spaces. Industrial sectors churned out ships, weapons, and equipment. Residential areas housed 50,000 people in comfortable conditions. Standing on New Terra's observation deck, looked out at the growing city. Humans and worked side by side, building, creating, expanding. Trade ships came and went, carrying goods to colonies across the rim. Military vessels patrolled the borders, keeping everyone safe. "The Council wanted to be rid of us," said to her assistant. "They thought exile was punishment. They gave us the richest region in the galaxy and forced us to become self-reliant. They created their own worst nightmare." Her assistant smiled. "Should we send them a thank you message?" "Not yet," replied. "But soon they're going to realize what they've done. And when they do, I want them to see exactly what humanity has become." 5 years after the exile, New Terra had become the beating heart of the Outer Rim. The asteroid city sprawled across 3 connected space rocks, each one hollowed out and transformed into a living, working community. 200,000 beings called it home now, not just humans but members of a dozen exiled species. Administrator walked through the central plaza, watching the daily bustle of Rim life. Human merchants bargained with traders over biological compounds. Engineers discussed ship designs with mineral specialists. Children of 3 different species played together in the artificial gravity of the park level, their laughter echoing off the dome above. This was what the Council had feared, realized. Not human aggression or expansion, but human willingness to cooperate with anyone, to share technology freely, to build partnerships instead of hierarchies. The Council maintained order through control and separation. Humanity was building something different. "Administrator," her assistant approached quickly, "we have a situation. Council intelligence officers have been detected at the border station. They're not hiding anymore." Nodded. She had been expecting this. For months, her people had been catching Council spies trying to infiltrate Rim territories. At first, the spying had been clumsy and easy to detect. Recently, it had become more sophisticated, which meant the Council was taking the Rim seriously. Intelligence officer Min met in the security center. The young officer had been tracking Council activities since the exile began, building a network of informants and monitoring communications that leaked through the barrier nebula. "They're scared," Min reported, pulling up intercepted messages on her screen. "These communications are between Council military commanders and their intelligence division. They're arguing about what to do about us." Read through the decoded messages. The Council had finally realized what was happening in the Rim. Their spies reported thriving colonies, advanced technology, and military strength growing at an alarming rate. The exiled species weren't dying off. They were building an empire. "What do you think they'll do?" asked. Min pointed to one particular message. "This one is interesting. A Lumen is arguing for immediate military action. She says humanity represents a greater threat now than when we were exiled. But there's resistance from other Council members. They're afraid that attacking us openly will unite all the exiled species against them." "They should be afraid," said quietly. "How many independent species have joined us now?" 17 have signed formal alliance agreements. Another dozen trade with us regularly without formal ties. And there are rumors that some Council member species are quietly sympathetic to our position. The Council's problem was simple. By exiling humanity, they had created a rallying point for everyone who opposed their authority. The Outer Rim was becoming a haven for free peoples, and humanity was at its center. But freedom came with challenges. The lawless zones of the Rim attracted criminals and predators. Pirate armadas operated from hidden bases, raiding trade ships and attacking weak colonies. Slaver rings captured beings from vulnerable settlements and sold them in illegal markets. The Council's authority didn't reach into the Rim, which meant no one was enforcing order except the species who lived there. Admiral Bora had been preparing for this problem. She commanded the combined fleet of the Rim Coalition, the formal alliance that had grown from the original human partnership. Her fleet included ships from 7 different species, all operating under unified command. The largest pirate force is the Red Hand Armada, Bora explained to her senior officers. They control the belt and have been raiding our outer colonies for months. Intelligence estimates they have 60 warships and twice that many support vessels. We have 47 warships, her first officer noted. We're outnumbered. In ships, yes, Bora agreed, but not in capability. Our vessels use hybrid drives and improved weapons. Our crews train constantly in Rim combat conditions. And we have something they don't have: coordination. The pirate fleets were powerful but disorganized. Each captain was essentially independent, working together only when convenient. Bora's fleet operated as a single unit, with shared tactics and communication. The battle for Belt lasted 2 weeks. Bora's strategy was patient and methodical. She didn't try to destroy the pirates in one massive engagement. Instead, her ships picked off pirate vessels in small groups, ambushing patrol ships and raiding supply bases. Each loss weakened pirate morale and coordination. When the final confrontation came, half the pirate fleet had already been destroyed, and the other half was demoralized and low on supplies. Bora's coalition forces surrounded the remaining pirate stronghold and offered one chance for surrender. Most pirates took it. Those who didn't were eliminated in a brief, brutal assault. The Red Hand Armada ceased to exist. Word of the victory spread fast. Other pirate groups either fled Rim territories or tried to negotiate with the coalition for legitimate work. Slaver operations shut down as their bases were systematically destroyed. The lawless zones became significantly less lawless. But defeating pirates was easier than managing politics. The Galactic Council, threatened by the coalition's success, began implementing economic warfare. They declared it illegal for any council member species to trade with Rim territories. They established blockades at key jump points leading to the Outer Rim. They pressured neutral species to cut off all contact with exiled peoples. Diplomat had the difficult job of navigating these restrictions. He was skilled at reading between the lines, at understanding what people really meant versus what they said publicly. His network of contacts extended throughout council space and beyond. Several council species are unhappy with the trade restrictions, reported to. They rely on rare minerals that mainly come from the Rim now. They need biological compounds that only the produce. The Council is hurting its own members to hurt us. Can we exploit that? Asked. Already doing it. I've established secret trade agreements with 6 Council species. They get the resources they need, we get goods and intelligence. Everyone benefits except the Council leadership. The secret trade routes operated through neutral intermediaries and hidden jump points. Ships would leave Council space officially empty, meet with Rim traders at concealed locations, exchange cargo, and return with their holds full. The Council knew it was happening but couldn't stop it without alienating their own members. More importantly, these secret contacts revealed that the Council was not unified. Young species and frontier colonies admired what humanity had built in the Rim. They saw the coalition as proof that you didn't need the Council's permission to succeed. Reform movements began spreading through Council space, demanding more freedom and less central control. The crisis came at Gateway Station. Built at the edge of the Barrier Nebula, Gateway was the primary trade hub connecting the Rim with the rest of the galaxy. Thousands of ships passed through each month, carrying goods in both directions. It was also heavily fortified, with defensive platforms and a permanent fleet presence. Captain Jin commanded the defense fleet at Gateway. She was young for such a critical post, but she had proven herself during the pirate wars. When sensors detected a council fleet approaching, she immediately ordered her ships to battle stations. "Identify them," she commanded. 3 council battleships, 12 cruisers, 30 escort vessels, her sensor officer reported. "They're not hiding. This is an official fleet." The council commander opened a channel. "Gateway Station is declared a threat to galactic security. You have 1 hour to evacuate all personnel. After that, we will destroy the station and all ships that remain." Jin's response was immediate. "Gateway Station is Sovereign Rim Coalition territory. You have no authority here. Any attack will be considered an act of war." "You have 1 hour," the council commander repeated and cut the connection. Jin had 8 warships against 45. The council had overwhelming firepower and numbers, but she also had the barrier nebula behind her, a massive cloud of ionized gas that played havoc with sensors and communications. And she had ships designed to fight in exactly these conditions. "We can't win by trading shots," Jin told her captains. "We need to make them afraid, make them think the cost is too high." Her strategy was aggressive and risky. Instead of defending the station, she took the fight to the council fleet. Her ships dove into the nebula, using its interference to mask their movements. They emerged without warning, hit council vessels with concentrated fire, and vanished back into the nebula before return fire could be coordinated. The experimental weapons that one's engineers had developed proved devastating. Gravity torpedoes that created localized spacetime distortions, ripping apart ship hulls. EMP mines that fried electronics and left vessels dead in space. Plasma lances that burned through shields in seconds. For 6 hours the battle raged. Jin lost 2 ships, their crews dying to protect Gateway. But the Council lost 9 vessels, including 1 battleship. Their neat formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried to track attackers they couldn't see and defend against weapons they didn't understand. Finally, the Council commander requested a ceasefire. His fleet limping back toward Council space with significant casualties. Gateway Station remained intact, its defenders bloodied but victorious. The battle's implications rippled across the galaxy. The Council had openly attacked Rim territory and been defeated. This wasn't a skirmish against pirates or raiders. This was a formal military engagement between the Galactic Council and the Rim Coalition, and the Council had lost. Speaker Dongwu addressed the Coalition Assembly in the aftermath. Representatives from 23 species filled the chamber in New Terra, all of them looking to humanity for leadership. "Today, the Council revealed their true intentions," Dongwu said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "They don't want us gone. They want us dead. They fear what we've built because it proves their system is not the only way. We have shown that species can thrive without bowing to their authority." The assembly erupted in agreement. Species that had been hesitant about full alliance now pledged their complete support. Independent groups that had only traded with the coalition formally requested membership. The attack on Gateway had united the Rim as nothing else could have. In the weeks following the battle, the Rim coalition transformed from a loose alliance into a legitimate government. A unified command structure was established, with clear authority and shared responsibilities. A common defense pact obligated all members to aid any member under attack. Economic integration accelerated as barriers between member species were removed. The Council had wanted to crush humanity before they became too strong. Instead, their attack had created exactly what they feared most: a unified, powerful alternative to Council authority. The Rim Coalition now controlled a third of the galaxy's most resource-rich region, commanded a battle-tested military, and offered freedom to any species willing to reject Council dominance. Standing on Gateway Station's observation deck, watching coalition ships patrol the border, Jin allowed herself a rare smile. The Council had taught humanity a valuable lesson during the exile. Power doesn't come from permission. It comes from strength, unity, and the will to defend what you've built. The Outer Rim was no longer a place of exile. It was home, and anyone who threatened that home would learn the same lesson the Council had learned at Gateway. Humanity did not back down. The Council's response to their defeat at Gateway was predictable. If they couldn't destroy the Rim through military force, they would strangle it economically. The blockades appeared within a month. Council fleets positioned themselves at every major jump point leading to the Outer Rim. They didn't attack ships directly, but they inspected every vessel, confiscated cargo heading to Rim territories, and arrested any crew members suspected of trading with the Coalition. Trade between the Rim and the rest of the galaxy slowed to a trickle. Diplomat sat in his office on New Terra, reviewing reports of seized ships and arrested traders. The economic pressure was having an effect. Several coalition worlds were running low on supplies they couldn't produce locally. Medical equipment, certain food stocks, specialized manufacturing components. The Rim was resource-rich but couldn't make everything it needed. "The Council thinks they can force us to negotiate," said to his assistant. "They believe if they squeeze hard enough, we'll beg to be to civilized space on their terms." "Will we?" his assistant asked nervously. "No," replied firmly, "but we need to be smart about this. We can't break their blockade militarily without starting a full war, so we go around it." His solution was elegant and complex. The galaxy was vast, and the Council couldn't watch every route simultaneously. Identified neutral species that had no formal ties to the Council or the Coalition. Through intermediaries, he approached them with business proposals. The negotiations took months. Traveled personally to meet with leaders of independent species, offering them lucrative trade agreements. The Coalition would sell them rare Rim resources at favorable prices. In exchange, these neutral traders would carry Coalition goods into Council space through routes the blockade didn't cover. It worked brilliantly. Officially, the neutral species traded only with each other. In reality, they acted as middlemen, moving Coalition products into Council markets and bringing back supplies the Rim needed. The Council couldn't stop this without attacking neutral species, which would turn even more of the galaxy against them. But its greatest achievement was discovering something unexpected. Several Council member species were quietly sympathetic to the Coalition's cause. They sent secret messages through encrypted channels, offering intelligence and support. One message particularly interested. It came from a species that had joined the Council 200 years ago and now regretted it. "Your exile showed us what the Council really is," the message read. "They claim to represent all civilized species, but they only represent the old empires that founded the Council. The rest of us are subjects, not partners. What you're building in the Rim, it's what the Council should have been." Couldn't openly support the Coalition without his people facing Council punishment, but he could provide intelligence. He warned about planned Council actions, shared information about internal Council politics, and identified other species that might be persuaded to support the Coalition secretly. Through contacts built a network of allies inside Council space itself. It was dangerous work. If the Council discovered what he was doing, they would consider it espionage and act accordingly. But the risk was worth it. Every ally inside the Council was worth 10 outside it. While managed quiet diplomacy, others dealt with more direct challenges. The blockades were only the beginning of the Council's economic warfare. They also launched a propaganda campaign, spreading lies about the Rim throughout civilized space. According to Council media, the Outer Rim was a lawless wasteland ruled by pirate gangs and criminals. Humans were painted as aggressive warmongers who had provoked their own exile. The coalition was described as a threat to galactic peace that would invade Council space given the chance. Assigned a team to counter this propaganda. They produced their own media showing the reality of Rim life, thriving colonies, peaceful cooperation between species, technological innovation, and freedom that Council citizens could only dream about. The material was smuggled into Council space through network and distributed secretly. The propaganda war revealed something important. The Council was afraid. They wouldn't be working so hard to make the coalition look bad if they weren't worried about their own citizens wanting to leave. And they were right to be worried. Reports indicated that emigration requests were increasing across Council space, especially among younger species and frontier colonies. But words and trade routes couldn't solve everything. 6 months after the Gateway battle, the Council escalated their aggression again. Captain Jin was conducting routine patrols near the Barrier Nebula when her sensors detected a large Council fleet entering Rim territory. This wasn't an inspection force or a blockade. This was an invasion fleet, 50 warships, including 4 battleships, supported by twice that many auxiliary vessels. "They're heading for the belt," her sensor officer reported. "That's where most of our mining operations are located." Jin immediately transmitted a warning to New Terra and mobilized her defense fleet. But she had only 12 ships in the area. Even with coalition reinforcements, they would be heavily outnumbered. The Council's strategy was clear. Take control of the belt and its valuable mining operations, then use it as a base to pressure the rest of the coalition. They weren't trying to destroy the Rim entirely, just hurt it enough to force negotiations. Admiral Bora arrived with the main coalition fleet within 2 days, but by then the Council had already begun fortifying their positions in. The belt was a massive asteroid field, difficult to navigate and full of hazards. Perfect territory for defense, terrible for assault. "We can't afford a long siege," Bora told her senior commanders. "We need those mining operations. Half the coalition depends on resources from. If the Council holds it for months, they'll cripple our economy." Marshal Ho, newly appointed to coordinate coalition military strategy, studied the tactical displays. He had spent 30 years in Earth's military before the exile, fighting in 3 wars and commanding forces on 2 continents. He understood something important about warfare. Sometimes you couldn't win by fighting directly. "The Council fleet is strong," Ho said, "but they're far from home. Their supply lines stretch all the way back through the Barrier Nebula. Those supply ships are vulnerable." Bora immediately grasped his meaning. Hit their logistics, force them to choose between defending their position and protecting their supplies. The coalition didn't have enough warships to challenge the Council fleet directly, but they had dozens of fast attack ships designed for raiding. Yang's frontier guard was mobilized, along with raiders and strike craft. Their mission was simple: destroy every Council supply ship trying to reach. The campaign was brutal and effective. Supply convoys found themselves ambushed in the nebula, where coalition ships had the advantage. Tankers carrying fuel were disabled and captured. Transport ships loaded with ammunition were destroyed. Support vessels were hunted down and eliminated one by one. After 3 weeks, the Council fleet was running low on supplies. Their fuel reserves were depleting. Ammunition was being rationed. Food supplies were tight. They had fortified an excellent position, but they couldn't hold it if they were starving. The Council commander requested a negotiation. Marshal Ho agreed to meet on neutral ground, a small station at the edge of the belt. The Council commander was unnamed, his insect features showing signs of stress. "You cannot win this by force," he said through his translator. "Our main fleet is larger than your entire military." "True," Ho agreed calmly. "But you can't supply that fleet in Rim territory. Every ship you send to support your forces becomes a target. How long can you maintain an occupation when it costs you 2 supply ships for every week you stay? His mandibles clicked in frustration. He knew the truth. The Council had military superiority, but the logistics didn't support a long-term occupation. They could take territory, but they couldn't hold it without bleeding resources constantly. "What are your terms?" finally asked. "Simple," Ho replied. "Immediate withdrawal from Belt and all Rim Coalition territory. Recognition of Coalition sovereignty over the Outer Rim. Cessation of blockade activities and economic warfare. In return, we won't attack Council space or interfere with your internal affairs." "The Council will never agree to that," protested. "Then we'll keep destroying your supply ships until you run out of food," Ho said flatly. "Your choice." The negotiation lasted 3 hours. Tried every argument, every threat, every compromise. Ho remained unmoved. He had the advantage and he knew it. The Council could win battles, but they were losing the war of attrition. Finally, transmitted a message to the Council leadership. The response took 6 hours to arrive. When it did, the commander's shoulders slumped in defeat. "The Council agrees to a temporary ceasefire," he said. "We will withdraw from Belt pending further negotiations." "Negotiations?" Ho raised an eyebrow. "We just negotiated. Those are our terms. Accept them or reject them, but understand that every day you delay, more of your supply ships die." Looked at the human marshal with something approaching respect. "You would make a good. You understand that sometimes victory comes from making the enemy's position untenable, not from defeating them in battle." "We learned from necessity," Ho replied. "The Council forced us to become what we are. This is your own fault." The Council fleet from over the next week. They took their wounded and what supplies they had left and retreated back through the barrier nebula. The Coalition had won another victory, but everyone knew this wasn't over. Back on New Terra, met with her senior advisors to assess the situation. The Council had tried economic warfare and failed. They had tried limited military action and failed. What would they try next? "Full-scale invasion," Admiral Bora said bluntly. "They can't let us keep winning. Their authority is crumbling. Species are questioning whether they need the Council at all. They have to crush us or risk losing control of their entire empire." "Then we need to be ready," said. "Because when they come in force, they won't be testing our defenses or trying to capture resources. They'll be trying to destroy us completely." Who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Not everyone in the Council wants that. My contacts tell me there's a growing peace faction. They argue that recognizing the Coalition is better than endless war, if we can strengthen them." "We strengthen them by showing we can't be defeated," Marshal Ho interrupted. "Peace factions only win when the war faction realizes they can't achieve victory. We need to break the Council's will to fight." Nodded slowly. "Then we prepare. We fortify every colony, upgrade every ship, train every soldier. And when the Council comes with everything they have, we show them that humanity doesn't break." The Outer Rim had 8 months to prepare for the storm that was coming. 8 months to turn the Coalition into an unbreakable fortress. 8 months to prove that the exiled species of the Rim were not victims to be bullied, but a power to be reckoned with. The Council had made humanity their enemy. Now they were going to learn what that truly meant. The Council's invasion fleet was the largest military force assembled in 3,000 years. 300 warships, including 12 battleships and 50 cruisers. Over 1 million soldiers carried on transport vessels. Enough firepower to conquer a dozen worlds simultaneously. Supreme Commander Haewon watched the sensor displays from her command ship, the Coalition flagship Unity. The Council fleet was approaching through 3 different vectors, clearly intending to divide Coalition forces and overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Haewon had been preparing for this moment since the battle 8 months ago. Every available ship had been upgraded with improved weapons and shields. Every colony had been fortified with defensive platforms and ground-based weapons. Every soldier had trained for the defense they knew was coming. But the coalition still had less than 100 warships. Even with technological superiority and better tactics, the numbers were overwhelming. A direct confrontation would be suicide. "We don't fight them on their terms," HFY told her command staff. "The Rim is our home. We know its dangers, its hazards, its hidden places. They're invading enemy territory without understanding what that means." Her strategy was called deep defense. Instead of meeting the Council at the border, coalition forces would let them penetrate deep into Rim territory. Then they would use every natural hazard, every spatial anomaly, every dangerous phenomenon the Outer Rim offered as weapons. The Council fleet entered Rim space divided into three main groups. The Northern Fleet headed for New Terra, hopping to destroy the Coalition capital. The Central Fleet targeted the major colony worlds that supported Coalition infrastructure. The Southern Fleet aimed for the mining operations that provided raw materials. Each fleet was powerful enough to annihilate anything the Coalition could field in a straight fight, but HFY had no intention of fighting straight. The Northern Fleet entered the Expanse, a region where gravitational eddies created unpredictable space-time distortions. Council navigators tried to chart safe courses, but they were using standard navigational techniques for abnormal space. Coalition ships, with 8 years of Rim experience, could navigate the Expanse safely. The Council fleet lost 6 ships to gravitational shear in the first day. Admiral Bora commanded the harassment forces following the Northern Fleet. Her ships struck without warning, emerging from behind asteroids or gravity wells to launch attacks, then vanishing before return fire could be coordinated. The Council fleet had to slow down, maintain tight defensive formations, and watch for ambushes at every turn. What should have been a 3-day journey to New Terra took 2 weeks. By the time they arrived, they had lost 20 ships to accidents and ambushes. Their crews were exhausted, and their morale was crumbling. The Central Fleet faced different challenges. Captain Jin led them through the Crimson Expanse, a nebula filled with ionized radiation that disrupted sensors and communications. Council ships had to navigate nearly blind, relying on short-range instruments and visual confirmation. Coalition forces used the nebula like a fog of war. They seeded it with autonomous mines that activated when Council ships approached. They set up false sensor readings that led Council vessels into dead ends or dangerous zones. They conducted hit-and-run attacks from multiple directions, making it seem like the Coalition force was much larger than it actually was. The Central Fleet's commander grew increasingly paranoid, seeing threats everywhere and ordering his ships to fire at sensor ghosts. By the time they cleared the Crimson Expanse, they had expended 40% of their ammunition shooting at nothing and lost 18 ships to mines and actual attacks. The Southern Fleet had the worst experience. Marshal Ho personally led them through Void Beast territory. These massive space-dwelling creatures were usually dormant, but Coalition scientists had learned how to attract them using specific energy signatures. Void Beasts attacked anything that threatened them. The Council fleet, with its hundreds of ships and powerful engines, looked like a massive threat. The beasts swarmed the Southern Fleet, their armored hides shrugging off weapons fire while their tentacles ripped apart ship hulls. The Southern Fleet commander ordered a retreat, but Void Beasts followed prey aggressively. By the time they escaped the feeding grounds, the Southern Fleet had lost 35 ships and was in complete disarray. When the 3 Council fleets finally regrouped near New Terra, they had lost a third of their strength before even engaging Coalition forces directly. Their crews were exhausted, scared, and demoralized. They had invaded the Outer Rim expecting an easy victory against desperate exiles. Instead, they were being destroyed piece by piece by an enemy that refused to fight fair. The Council Supreme Commander, a crystalline lumen named Radiant Sky, broadcast a message to New Terra demanding immediate surrender. "Your resistance is pointless," Radiant Sky's translated voice echoed across all frequencies. "We still have 200 warships. You have perhaps 50. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Continue fighting and we will destroy every human colony in the Rim." Haywan responded personally. "You came to our home with threats and violence. You've lost 80 ships trying to reach us. How many more are you willing to lose? Because we're not surrendering. This is our territory, our home, and we will defend it to the last ship." The Battle of New Terra began at dawn on the colony's primary habitat. The Council fleet approached in a massive formation, overwhelming firepower concentrated for a decisive strike. Haywan's strategy was to avoid that strike entirely. Coalition ships scattered, refusing to present a unified target. They used New Terra's asteroid field for cover, popping out to fire and vanishing back into the rocks. Defensive platforms added their firepower, creating crossfire that forced Council ships to break formation to avoid being trapped. The battle raged for 18 hours. Council ships had superior numbers, but they were fighting in an asteroid field against an enemy that knew every hiding spot, every angle of fire, every dangerous approach. Coalition ships coordinated perfectly, setting up ambushes and supporting each other with practiced precision. When darkness fell, the Council fleet had lost 30 more ships and Radiant Sky called a temporary retreat to regroup. The Coalition had lost 8 vessels, but their infrastructure remained intact and their resolve was unshaken. Scientists had been working on a secret project during the 8 months of preparation. He called it the Gravity Well Generator, a massive device that could create localized spacetime distortions on command. It was untested, experimental, and might not work, but if it did work, it could change everything. The device was installed on a hidden platform at the edge of the Crimson Expanse. When the Council fleet regrouped for their second assault on New Terra, Haywan ordered it to activate it. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. A massive gravity well appeared in the middle of the Council formation, pulling ships toward its center. Vessels that were too close were crushed by gravitational forces. Ships on the edges of the effect struggled to escape, their engines straining against the pull. The Council fleet was trapped. They couldn't advance, couldn't retreat, and couldn't maintain formation. For the first time in the war, they were completely vulnerable. Marshal Ho didn't hesitate. He led every available coalition ship in a coordinated assault on the trapped fleet. Coalition forces hit the Council from all sides simultaneously, targeting engines and weapon systems, disabling rather than destroying when possible. The battle lasted 4 hours. When the gravity well finally dissipated, 70 Council ships had been disabled or destroyed. The remaining fleet was scattered, disorganized, and broken. Radiant Sky transmitted a message requesting negotiation. This time, there was no arrogance in the tone, no threats or demands, just a simple request for terms. Marshal Ho met with the Council commander on a neutral station. Radiant Sky's crystalline form showed cracks and damage, physical manifestations of the stress and defeat. "You've won," Radiant Sky said simply. "State your terms." Ho laid out the Coalition's demands: immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of all Council forces from Rim territory, formal recognition of the Rim Coalition as an independent sovereign entity, cessation of all blockades, sanctions, and economic warfare, opening of official diplomatic relations and trade agreements. "The Council will never accept this," Radiant Sky protested weakly. "They will," Ho replied, "because you're going to explain to them that the alternative is the complete destruction of this invasion fleet. We have you trapped in our territory with no easy way home. Your supply lines are cut. Your fleet is broken. Accept these terms or we start destroying your ships one by one until you have nothing left." Radiant Sky's lights dimmed in resignation. The commander sent a message to the Council leadership, explaining the situation and recommending acceptance of coalition terms. The response took an entire day to arrive. The council agreed. They had no choice. Their grand invasion had failed spectacularly, and continuing the war would only lead to more losses. The Rim Coalition had proven they couldn't be conquered. The treaty was signed 3 weeks later on Gateway Station. Ambassador Jin represented the coalition, negotiating the final details with council diplomats who still struggled to accept what had happened. "How did you do it?" one council diplomat asked Jin privately. "You were exiles, refugees. We gave you the worst region of the galaxy and expected you to disappear. Instead, you became strong enough to defeat us." Jin smiled. "You answered your own question. You exiled us, which forced us to become self-reliant. You gave us the Outer Rim, which turned out to be rich in resources. You left us alone, which gave us time to innovate and grow. And you treated us as enemies, which united every exiled species under a common cause. You created us." The treaty was comprehensive. The Council recognized the Rim Coalition as a sovereign entity controlling all Outer Rim territories. Trade routes were opened, with both sides agreeing to free commerce. A non-aggression pact was signed, establishing permanent peace. Most importantly, any species wishing to leave Council space and join the coalition was free to do so. The implications of that last clause became clear within months. Entire colonies requested transfer to coalition authority. Young species that had chafed under Council control emigrated to the Rim. Even some older, established species began opening embassies in New Terra, exploring their options. 20 years after the treaty, the transformation was complete. The Outer Rim had become the most dynamic, prosperous, and free region in the galaxy. New Terra's population had grown to 2 million beings from 40 different species. Coalition territory expanded to include over 100 colony worlds and countless stations, outposts, and settlements. The Galactic Council still existed, still governed the inner and mid-rim, but their authority was diminished, their reputation damaged. They had positioned themselves as the sole legitimate power in the galaxy, and the Coalition had proven that wrong. Now they had to compete for loyalty and membership rather than assuming it. Wu, now elderly and retired, stood on New Terra's observation deck watching ships come and go. He had been Earth's ambassador when the exile began, watching humanity be cast out in disgrace. Now he was watching former Council species petition to join the Coalition, seeking the opportunity and freedom that only the Rim offered. "Do you ever regret it?" a young assistant asked him. "The exile, losing your home, all those years of struggle." Wu thought about it carefully. "We lost worlds we had settled. We lost the comfort and security of Council space. Thousands died in those early years, struggling to survive in the Rim. So yes, I regret the suffering, but the exile itself," he smiled. "That was the best thing that ever happened to humanity." "Why?" the assistant asked, confused. "Because it forced us to discover what we're truly capable of," Wu explained. "When you have everything provided, you never test your limits. When you're comfortable, you never innovate. When you're accepted, you never question the system. The Council's exile stripped away all of that. It forced us to become strong, self-reliant, and united. It forced us to build something better than what we lost." He gestured at the bustling station, at the ships from dozens of species, at the thriving civilization that had grown from nothing. "The Council feared us because we were different. So they tried to isolate us, control us, and finally remove us. They thought exile was punishment. They gave us freedom." The young assistant looked out at New Terra with new understanding. "What happens now?" "Now," Wu smiled. "Now we continue building. We continue growing. We continue showing the galaxy that there's a better way. The Council may have banished humanity, but we seized the Outer Rim and made it ours, and we're never giving it back." Far away, in Council space, reformers used the Coalition as an example of what could be achieved without centralized control. Independence movements gained strength. Young species questioned why they needed council permission to govern themselves. The old order was crumbling, and no amount of military force or political maneuvering could stop it. The Outer Rim, once a place of exile and punishment, had become a beacon of hope, and humanity, once considered too dangerous and unpredictable to remain in civilized space, had proven exactly why they were dangerous, not because they were violent or aggressive, but because they refused to accept limits on what was possible. The Council had banished them. Humanity had seized the Outer Rim, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.